It's a privilege to be here with you. LAM Action does important and thoughtful work to drive change for people living with a condition which is complex, under-recognised and under-researched. And I'm conscious that I'm addressing a room of experts, patients and carers who have lived experience that must shape everything we do, clinicians and researchers like Professor Simon Johnson, who bring insight and commitment to advancing this field, advocates and supporters who give their time, energy and expertise to create change. Given your expertise, I want to leave plenty of time for questions and discussions at the end. So what I'm going to do is just touch on 4 things which I hope will stimulate a good conversation between us all. These 4 things are who LifeArc is and why we're here, why rare respiratory diseases need a new approach, why patient engagement must be at the heart of that approach, and a few thoughts on how LAM Action might build even greater visibility and influence. So if I just start with a few words about LifeArc. We are a not-for-profit organisation, and our focus is on rare diseases and global health infections, particularly resistant infections. We want to see a world where pioneering science reaches people with rare conditions and changes their lives. To make this a reality, we help science over the barriers that usually stop it reaching people with rare conditions. We do this by offering scientific support, expertise and funding, but above all by convening and collaborating, because we know we will go further and faster together. People living with rare diseases are persistently overlooked because it's difficult to make progress in these areas. But we don't want anyone to miss out on innovation because of complexity, cost, or commercial risk. We are self-funded through commercial revenues and investments, which we then reinvest into work that furthers our mission. We hope that by doing this, we can help create a new model for funding previously hard to fund areas. We're particularly focused on creating impact within 3 to 5 years. That's ambitious, but ambition is what people living with rare diseases should expect. Here's a very brief video which brings to life some of what we want to achieve at LifeArc. LifeArc is all about turning scientific discoveries into treatments that change lives. We focus on rare conditions, we drive technologies and treatments, and we collaborate to achieve our goals.
LifeArc is innovative,
passionate,
pushing the boundaries,
making a huge difference for people with rare conditions.
We want to work with others who share our passion. If we collaborate, we'll amplify our strengths, we'll accelerate our progress, and we'll achieve a lot more by working together.
We believe that science has the power to change lives.
You're giving us hope that there could be potential new treatments available, and that would be a wonderful thing to see in the future.
Together, we can achieve extraordinary things. So LAM is a powerful example of why this focus matters. It's ultra rare. It almost exclusively affects women. It's difficult to diagnose and often misunderstood, and it doesn't often attract the commercial investment that more visible or common diseases might. That's exactly why organisations like LifeArc exist, to bring focus, urgency and coordination to conditions that don't always get their fair share of attention. Traditional approaches to research and development haven't worked for rare disease. They've been fragmented, they've been slow, and they haven't been built with small patient communities in mind. There are over 7,000 rare diseases. Around 95% of them don't have an effective treatment. And even when promising treatments are identified for rare diseases, they often stall. Over the last 25 years, the European Medicines Agency has labelled more than 3,000 rare disease therapies as promising, but fewer than 300 have ever reached the market. Sadly, this is no less true for rare respiratory diseases, and within that, LAM. As you all know, currently around 350 women in the UK have a diagnosis of LAM. Globally, it's likely to be over 80,000. And of course, neither of these figures include those still waiting for a diagnosis. It can take years for people to get a LAM diagnosis. In some cases, it can take up to a decade. During that time, symptoms may worsen and opportunities for early intervention may be lost. So what's going wrong and how do we solve it? And do we just need to do more science? In part, yes, but this is not just a scientific challenge. It's a structural challenge. Rare disease research is often hindered by fragmented expertise, hard to diagnose patient populations, and limited funding. But there are better ways. Many of you will be familiar with the MILES trial, a collaboration across borders, disciplines, and organisations to see if an existing drug could improve outcomes for women with LAM. It did. Now there is a new standard of care for women with LAM, and what made that trial possible wasn't just the science. It was made possible by the involvement of patients via the LAM Foundation in the US, but also through LAM Action here in the UK. And it was made possible by collaboration. To quote the LAM Action website, the success of this programme is due to the excellent collaboration between research workers in different countries, to the establishment of registries of patients with LAM, and to the way that basic scientists, clinicians, patient and self-help groups have worked together. That approach, one with collaboration and lived experience at its heart, is what we aim for at LifeArc. But we also want to share, spread and strengthen that model. We want to help build a coordinated ecosystem for rare respiratory diseases in the UK. That's why last year we launched the LifeArc Translational Centre for Rare Respiratory Diseases. It is a UK-wide collaboration led out of Edinburgh, which aims to become the go-to place for researching rare respiratory diseases. As well as Edinburgh, the centre has partners in Nottingham, Belfast, Leeds, Cambridge and more. LAM Action is a founding charity partner, and your involvement has helped shape the centre's direction from the start. The centre is focused on early clinical studies, a national biobank, and developing better disease models. It's backed by a 9.4 million LifeArc investment over 5 years, and some LAM-specific research is already underway. In Nottingham, scientists are developing miniature lung models called organoids using cells from LAM patients. These models help us understand how the disease progresses and allow new treatments to be tested safely before reaching clinical trial stage. Researchers are also using patient-derived tissue to build drug screening platforms, and that work is part of a wider strategy to identify and advance repurposed drugs like rapamycin. As well as rapamycin, there are now several other candidates for drug repurposing. We will strongly support any collaborations that need to happen to accelerate this work between this rare respiratory centre, the other centres and beyond. LAM is complex, but this kind of work, grounded in biology, guided by patients' needs, is exactly what's needed to make progress. Here is another short video, this time just about the Centre for Rare Respiratory Diseases.
So our project, the Rare Respiratory Disease Centre, works across both paediatrics and adult respiratory medicine. It brings together basic scientists, translational scientists, patient groups, and across all 4 parts of the United Kingdom. The primary focus is to discover new therapies and diagnostics for patients and to take those therapies to the patient groups across the UK.
LifeArc has invested £40 million into 4 centres around the UK. These translational centres for rare diseases will unlock new tests, treatments and potentially cures for people living with rare diseases.
We have an incredible NHS, we have incredible patient groups, we have incredible scientists, but rarely do we work together because we don't have the mechanisms or the structures to do that. The opportunity now is to come together, work together and change the landscape. A key hurdle is the ability to move beyond academia, to commercialise, to be entrepreneurial. Having that envelope of LifeArc around us with their commercial capability will allow us to make those crucial steps.
In order to get the maximum amount of impact from these centres, we want them to be sharing knowledge and experiences and skills across the different centres.
Our centre is an open, porous centre. We welcome and encourage collaboration, and ultimately we know that when we come to taking these therapies forward, we need the patient support, we need the parent support to take this forward. We want the patient voice to be the heart of what we do. We want to create a new blueprint, a new transformational pathway in which we can take academic discoveries through into patient impact. And that's genuinely exciting. It will build communities, but most importantly, will rapidly translate our discoveries into tangible therapies.
So I hope you agree this is an exciting approach where together we can start to build a new model for rare respiratory diseases. One of the reasons we're excited is that this Centre for Rare Respiratory Diseases is one of 4 translational centres for rare disease that LifeArc launched last year with a combined 40 million investment. Together, the 4 centres aim to accelerate translation into the clinic, spark new collaborations and reduce duplication. All 4 centres are connected through a central hub, which brings together the expertise of Beacon for Rare Diseases, Genetic Alliance UK and LifeArc. The goal is to put collaboration and patient engagement at the heart of a UK approach to rare diseases. The hub will ensure that patient engagement across all 4 of the centres is meaningful, training is shared, policy insights are translated across disease areas, and that no group works in isolation. We aim for these centres alongside other initiatives to become a beacon of translational excellence within the rare disease ecosystem, helping scientists progress ideas into tests, then tests into treatments, and ultimately cures for people with rare diseases. So why is patient engagement so important for the LifeArc rare disease centres? Well, it's for all the reasons you know. Lived experience experts help set research priorities. If you didn't participate in trials, they wouldn't happen. And for every trial that you take part in, we learn more. Our knowledge stretches that little bit further and new treatments come just a little bit closer. One biotech working in rare respiratory disease told us that they knew of just 3 patients with the condition that they were working on. But through a patient group, they identified 20 more almost overnight. That made development viable. That made progress possible. Patient experience data is now recognised as a class of evidence that needs to be considered in regulatory decision-making. But collecting it takes care, consistency, and community. Charities like LAM Action are central to that effort. At LifeArc, we've tried to embed lived experience in a number of ways. To take a few examples, we work with the Cystic Fibrosis Trust and Asthma and Lung UK to define what treatment should look like, bringing patients into funding decisions, including reviewing applications, putting lived experience at the heart of all of the 4 of our translational centres. But this isn't just about listening. It's about engaging and partnering, and it matters just as much when we move from science to policy. As I mentioned earlier, even when life-changing science exists, it can get stuck in the system. Sometimes the science is doable, but hasn't been done. Sometimes the science has been done, but nobody has tested it with patients. And sometimes the science has been done, it has been tested with patients, but the drug isn't being made available. Unfortunately, these are common blockages for rare diseases, places where complexity, cost, or risk, not science, are what is stopping new drugs reaching people with rare respiratory diseases like LAM. The UK's research system isn't set up for small patient populations. Progress is often slow, expertise is fragmented, and the social and economic value of rare disease research isn't often recognised. Change at the system level requires policy change. LifeArc and Genetic Alliance UK recently brought together a rare disease policy task force to look at the key barriers to rare disease research in the UK. Our task force of experts included people with lived experience as well as representatives of patient organisations. The final report's about to come out in July and will focus on 3 key areas, all of which ring true in the case of LAM. Firstly, diagnosis and data. Rare conditions are still underrepresented in mainstream data systems. Delays are common. Data is fragmented. That makes it harder to understand disease burden or identify trial participants. Secondly, market access. Regulators don't always make it easy for smaller innovators. And because economic models aren't tailored to rare disease, the value of a treatment is often underestimated. Thirdly, support for innovators. Navigating the regulatory system is complex, especially for innovators who don't have big money or deep expertise behind them. We need clearer routes, faster decisions, and better support. Our recommendations include embedding rare disease needs in the UK's health data strategy, reforming how we assess the economic value of new treatments to reflect real-world and patient experience, and launching a single end-to-end support service for innovators. System change and scientific progress must go hand in hand. And if we want that change that lasts, patients' voices must shape both. LAM Action is already doing remarkable work. Around 98% of LAM patients have signed up to research cohorts at the LAM Centre and Rare Cystic Lung Disease Centres in Nottingham, an unbelievable level of commitment. To take just one example, most patients in the rapamycin repurposing trial were members of LAM Action. And when it comes to fundraising, the dedication and effectiveness of LAM Action members are truly commendable. But like many rare disease charities, gaining visibility and influence can be a challenge, especially in a system that wasn't built with rare conditions in mind. There's no easy way to cut through, but clarity of purpose is a powerful starting point. So I'm going to pose a series of questions for you to think about as we can debate a bit later. What change do you most want to see? And who needs to hear your voice to make that happen? Other groups have shown what's possible. The Cystic Fibrosis Trust developed a top 10 list of research priorities defined by patients. They now co-design trials and review services. My Name's Doddy Foundation made motor neurone disease a national cause. Rugby legend Doddy Weir's voice brought attention and credibility. The result? 50 million in UK government research funding. Deborah and the EB Research Partnership focused their efforts on repurposing and used compelling stories and clear research asks to drive change for those living with epidermolysis bullosa. The backing of football star Graham Souness brought national visibility, from swimming the English Channel to appearing on TV with young people living with EB. His advocacy has helped turn EB from an unknown condition into one the public now recognises and cares about. So what do these examples have in common? Well, they have clear goals, strong stories, and often high-profile figures to help carry the message. So that does raise some questions for LAM Action. Are you making full use of the voices already connected to your cause? Are there high-profile people in your community who can use their skills and experiences to open doors or amplify your message? What would a high-profile, high-impact campaign look like for LAM Action? What kind of stories shift perception? Do you have those stories ready to tell? It might also help to remind that LAM, almost as we said earlier, exclusively affects women, a group that has been historically overlooked in medical research and is certainly a focus you could give to any campaign. So I'm looking forward to discussing these and other questions very shortly, but I'll end by reiterating that progress in ultra-rare disease will only come through partnership. If we want faster diagnosis, better trials, real treatments, we have to build that together. LifeArc is proud to be in this with you, and together we can make life science life-changing. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Sam. I think that was an absolutely excellent discussion about really the transformative impact that organisations such as LifeArc can have on the ecosystem. I think the call to action about system-wide change is key. The ability then to influence policy, and I hope what's come through loud and clear is the voice of the patient. You know, it's us in this room with lived experience that can help influence that. Thanks for researching us so thoroughly as well. That has been really, you were spot on. I think, and actually really beneficial to see someone with fresh eyes take a look at us as an organisation. And I think we welcome the challenges that you have, that you laid out there. You know, how do we compare with Cystic Fibrosis Trust or with the motor neuron disease associations? And could we be more ambitious with what we do? So I think some really, really helpful thoughts there, both for us to discuss as a group and I think also for the committee to take on board as we consider this. I'd like to invite onto the stage then to join Sam would be Simon, Jill and Claire as well. And really this is, as we mentioned, the Rare Respiratory Centre has been running now for a year. And, you know, just have some thoughts and commentary from people closely involved with it about what it's like. And then we'll open the floor to questions and there'll be a mic going around for it. So Simon, maybe I'll start with you from the scientific and research perspective. You know, what has the centre done for you?
So, I mean, speaking with Sam earlier, and as most of you know, I've worked in rare diseases for over sort of 30 years, and it has been an area where you can work really hard, you can make progress, you can discover things, and you can do useful things. But your slide about where stuff gets stuck, it was very salient, really. And now that we have the LifeArc Centre, things that run in our lab that actually were really hard to see what's the next step, how can we bring this to patients, how can we do a trial of this drug? And I'm basically a drug repurposing sort of person, which means because you're in a rare disease, you don't spend millions, tens of millions developing a new drug. You find drugs that are there for other indications, been tested in people, usually cheap, and then they might work for your disease. And rapamycin was one of those, and we've actually done other studies that weren't as successful as that. But now we're in a position where we have groups of people that actually know how to do the next step. We've got collaborators that will screen lots of drugs for us. We've got the funding to take our models that we used to look at one drug at a time, and people in my lab who speak to you, like Debbie Clements, you know, will spend months and months and months looking at one drug. We can look now at 10,000 virtually overnight when everybody's in bed. A machine's just going to see whether they work in our models. We've then got the next step. We can we've got systems through the LifeArc Centre where people can test drugs on individual patients at very low dose, so it's not dangerous, to see if they really work in humans. And then LifeArc fund, as one of their centres, a clinical trial network for specifically for rare diseases. So we've got the best chance of being able to take our discoveries from the lab and bring them to people quicker. So you know, I'm excited about this. It's very nice to have other people involved, and you know, it's nice to hear from Cormac this morning, have another LAM researcher speaking at this meeting rather than just our group. So yeah, I'm very excited about where it's going now.
That's brilliant. No, thanks, Simon. And then Jill and Claire, from the patient perspective, what's it been like for you?
Well, I think, as Simon said, it's just been so exciting for the LAM community in general. I mean, we've been used to collaborating with, you know, the patients, the clinicians, the researchers, and we've worked closely together. And that's been, well, this meeting is testament to that. And we've done that over the years. So within our LAM community, we're pretty well connected, and we're used to collaboration. But it's within, from a patient point of view, it's within that community. What's fantastic about the LifeArc Centre is that we are one of a number of exemplar diseases in at the beginning, but that will also increase where, we're all using models that we can learn from. There's that cross-fertilization of ideas, and that momentum is building, and that's what's really exciting. So, actually just being with a lot of other very rare disease groups. And I think the bit that's, I'm going to say, special about us, or the advantage of being so rare, is that this level of collaboration that we have with our researchers, with our scientists and our clinicians as patients, we get far more access than if we had a more common disease. But then that's just those of us who've been diagnosed. So diagnosis itself remains one of the biggest issues, and hopefully that will be something else that the new rare disease centre, the respiratory disease centre, helps. We're certainly finding, the infection, the enthusiasm that we get is infectious, amongst all the different groups. There have been some logistical challenges from the patient side. It's taken a while for the clinical side and the scientists across 11 centres to get all these groups talking to each other, and as with the patients, it's getting time to get us building, but we're there, and as I say, the momentum's building and we're catching up and just really, really excited.
Definitely echo those words from Jill. And I think it's really exciting that we've got that platform, and that LifeArc have recognised that, there are gaps, and that bringing everybody together is what is going to help and what is going to make things work. And giving us that platform and being one of the exemplar diseases is only an enormous benefit to us. And it's a privilege that I can be part of that and represent your views as part of this research.
Okay, that's brilliant. Now it's over to you. We've got a roving mic if people have got questions for the panel here. Please put your hand up and we can get a mic to you.
I should say, first of all, that I meant to say, Sam, it was so helpful having your explanation of LifeArc and what you do and what your goals are as an organisation, because I think at last year's meeting, we were still finding our way in terms of, what's it going to do for us, and just getting that very clear explanation is helpful. And the Rare Disease Centre website is about to launch quite soon. Yes, exactly. So that will be another resource, that there's a video on this specific centre as well, and then some more information.
Brilliant. We've got a question from Joy here.
Not so sure it's a question particularly for this. One of my struggles is not so much with the scientists or the clinicians. It's more, the specific is the PIP, personal independence payment sort of protocol. But that's just one highlight. It's also with things like Blue Badge, etc. They are designed for people who have lost a limb or you have to use a wheelchair or whatever. They are not designed for people who can't breathe properly. And similarly, when you go to fill in a medical form for an airline, they have now got things on there about oxygen and are you taking your own oxygen? But society, if you're disabled, it means you're in a wheelchair, is sort of the principle. And I think one of the things that needs a bigger voice is actually, at government level, at whatever, that isn't true anymore. The time when people with lung diseases and things were stuck at home and just stayed in a corner and didn't do anything is long gone. And it's a PR thing rather than a medical thing.
Yeah. Absolutely, sorry. Yeah, no, thanks for that, Joy. And I think it's something about, and maybe it's through scientific progress, that sometimes disability is not as visible as it was previously. And really interesting, Sam, and some of your thoughts on that.
Well, I think you've made a very good point. I mean, the point is really, I think, that at system level again, at national and policy level, people need to recognise the impact of different diseases, whether they be lung disease or other disease, and understand what that happens in somebody's daily living, so that they've adapted their support frameworks effectively to make those people's experiences of living life and as best life they can live, effective. And at the moment, I think we are still stuck in a bit of a time walk of the past, of sort of very narrow views of what disability is and how it impacts people, and policies and regulations being designed, well, not updated effectively, really. So I think if we can get, certainly for rare disease, it far more recognised, because of course rare disease actually isn't rare. 1 in 17 people have it, and it's 3.5 million people in the UK suffer from a rare disease, and get the government thinking about that. I mean, what I'd really like is for there to be a rare disease ambassador in government, a sort of czar for rare disease. Hopefully, I've heard a little sound that that may happen. If we can get a bit more dedicated focus on it, then all this sort of things that you're talking about, which is support, for your transport needs and your economic support you need, and everything else will feed through that mechanism. So I think there is hope, because where we were before was a very, as I said earlier, a very fragmented, uncoordinated approach, and people like poor Simon was going alone in his lab trying to do the best he could with a structural environment around him that wasn't effective. So I hope that moving forwards we'll make some really good progress, and that's one of the reasons I have newly coming into LifeArc and being a medic by background, said we need to put a very clear ambition around delivery. So that's why I've said 3 to 5 years. I mean, that is now a very ambitious target, but science in general can take up to 10 years. And I just thought, well, if we keep that goal, we'll go to that goal. So we all need to hold ourselves to account to move faster, because you are and others are living right now with their rare disease, and they need the support now. They don't want to wait 10 years for it.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Sam. A question in the middle here, and then one over there, Will.
Oh, thank you. Got your distance glasses on. You mentioned you wanted the patient voice. What does that look like? Obviously, we would go through the committee if we've got queries, questions, but can you expand on what you would expect from patients to help this evolve more?
For the Rare Respiratory Centre,
yeah.
or because LifeArc has done lots of different patient engagement for different disease areas or different theme areas, and done TPPs, policy documents they've published explaining what patients' key desires and wants are to help with their disease. But for the centre, I mean, what we want you to do is be integral to the design thinking of how it works, make sure the communication is effective with you, make sure when you want to be involved you can be. I mean, all the things I said earlier in that talk is, hopefully you'd be ready to volunteer for clinical trials if that is what you feel able to do. Hopefully you'd be able to be part of the patient voice nationally, back to government, so that we can, so things like, simple things like if we manage to get a TV slot, which is hard, to get media profile. I think having a patient alongside you that's prepared to do that is so much more powerful than somebody like me sitting there on my own. So there's lots of different ways you can get involved, but we just need to make sure that you are driving it alongside us to make that happen, and that we communicate effectively with you, and those who do want to do something more active, we know who they are, and we know what they want to do, so that we can coordinate better. Yeah.
Great. There's a question in the middle there, Will.
I just want to say, firstly, thank you so much for the important work that you're doing. I was diagnosed with LAM in 2015, and I've been on rapamycin since 2021, and I am really indebted to the LAM Centre, the nurses, and to Simon. grateful every year, because if I wasn't on it, I would my lung function would be significantly worse now. So this presentation, what you've talked about, feels really timely to me. I've been thinking, how can I use my voice, and would love to get involved as much as I can to do that. I also really completely agree. There's a public awareness issue about lung conditions. My lung collapsed, and I actually walked around for 2 weeks breathless, not realising that that's what it could be. My dad thought I was having a panic attack, and I eventually found something online that talked about breathlessness, and I thought I better go to the doctor. And along the way, I felt like I was kind of looking for a role model of sort of how can I live well with this, and sort of eventually found myself thinking, well, actually, it's about paving that way forward. And I feel like we are, the people now that needs to pave that way. So definitely agree that we need more positive representation. My question is, and this is a sort of full disclaimer, I'm a fundraiser. I've been a fundraiser for about 15 years, and I now, early this year, I started to work at Asthma and Lung UK. And my question is, how do you convince funders to invest in respiratory research, especially for rare conditions, when there are conditions that have, more wider prevalence, of cancer, Alzheimer's? Is it about, like you say, the public awareness and getting, ambassadors on board, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, sorry that you've had such a stormy time, because it sounds like you're doing well, but not fully where you need to be. So I hope it all goes well for you in the future, and if we get more repurposed drugs and everything else, you'll be able to participate in those trials too. Yes, well, I personally think it is about profile. I think that there is a lot of different people competing for public awareness, and the more compelling you make your story, the more likely you are to be noticed. The more the public cares, the more the government cares, and so the whole thing is quite important. And also off the back of it, the more you're able to fundraise. So certainly from LifeArc's perspective, what I want to do is some kind of really big national campaign. We've just brought in actually an absolutely fantastic Chief Communications Officer who has just come from Number 10 actually, and has run some very big national campaigns. She's absolutely brilliant. And so I hope what we can do is lift the public's awareness of rare diseases full stop, but then lift the public's awareness of the impact of them, and then bring in some clear messaging about how we can, if we put more coordinated focus on it, we can make a difference for people. And so, I really think something like that could be very impactful to make people think differently. And I think, as I said earlier, there's certain individual disease charities, which are rare, of course, like cystic fibrosis is a rare disease. And My Name's Doddy, Motor Neuritis, have done it very, very well. I mean, EB is a pretty rare disease, and just one celebrity coming alongside has made a big difference. So I do think we can do it. I look at other bigger charities, because of course a charity like yours would not have the funding to do something like this. But I look at some of those bigger charities like the British Heart Foundation, who obviously are looking at mainstream cardiovascular medicine, and they've been brilliant over the years in the way they get their message out. So actually, even though they're called the British Heart Foundation, they deal with obviously stroke, all forms of cardiovascular research. They haven't changed their name because actually they're really, really well known. And I mean, I don't know if you saw their recent ad campaign, and they've put things in central London as well on the tube and so on. And it's really powerful. So I think it's about the storytelling, fundamentally.
Great. Did you have a question? Do you want the mic?
And you mentioned about, because obviously it affects primarily women, about that's one area that we could really home in on for women, and also childbearing age women. So it affects families and the knock-on effect of people like us that have this problem, and what that's done to within our family, and building on that in some way. in terms of the message of how it affects us and what it means?
I completely agree with you. I think nowadays, luckily at last, we're becoming more inclusive and more interested in supporting women as well as men in different areas of life and society. And I think you do have a good potential pivot around this being a very female predominant disease, very impactful. I mean, you know, obviously if it gets to a worsening stage, there is risk of lung transplant. I mean, that's the same as cystic fibrosis, and cystic fibrosis has huge attention. So I do think there is a way, but it is about the design of how you do it and thinking carefully. So I'll leave Joe and others to debate it on your trustee board, but obviously we are linked in as a LifeArc organisation, and we very much want to help where we can with all the rare disease areas we're focused on. By the way, we're not focused on 7,000 rare diseases at the moment. We're focused on some quite discrete areas to try and make progress. So respiratory, neurodegenerative disease, rare dementias, motor neuron disease, global health resistant infections, and some ultra rare diseases that we think are important. So we are trying to be fairly targeted at the moment rather than go to all res. So you're absolutely in our main area of strategic focus. So, yeah.
Well, firstly, thank you, Sam and LifeArc, for all of your support of what we're doing here. Thank you for coming in person, actually, and having such a thoughtful presentation with, I think, some really good challenges for you know, what we need to consider in the next phase of LAM action. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for the panel as well and for your involvement in the centre. So if we can give a thanks, and I'll talk about them.